The first drop from the leaking ceiling lands squarely on my eviction notice. It's almost poetic, this small wound in the plaster dripping over the wound in my life. I stare at the writing to number $7,100 circled in Valerie's crisp handwriting. Rent, she calls it. A ransom, I call it. The radiator hums softly behind me, the kind of tired, faithful hum that's been part of this apartment for as long as I can remember. My grandmother, Eleanor, used to call this place a living heartbeat, each sound, each creak, each kettle whistle a reminder of life continuing, even when people don't. But tonight, the heartbeat feels faint. The knock on my door is sharp, deliberate. I don't need to open it to know it's her. Valerie doesn't wait for permission, she never has. When I open the door, she's already stepping inside, trailing the scent of expensive perfume and winter air. Her heels echo against the wood floor like a countdown. Miranda. Her voice is polished marble, beautiful, cold, unyielding. I trust you received the notice. I don't look at her. $7,000 a month? Valerie, that's not a rent. That's a declaration of war. She exhales, a smile curling that never touches her eyes. It's business. The market's changed. You, of all people, should understand adaptation. Adaptation. I want to laugh. I adapted when Grandma died and left me this building to manage. I adapted when Mom and Dad said they were proud of her for taking over the serious family matters. I adapted when they called me sentimental, said compassion doesn't build wealth. I've lived here my whole life, I whisper, voice breaking. This building is family. Family doesn't pay dividends. She smooths her blazer and glances around the room, her eyes lingering on Grandma's crochet blanket folded on the couch, on the framed photo of Eleanor and me in the garden. You always did cling to things that don't last. The words slice clean. For a heartbeat, I see her differently, not as my sister, but as an investor surveying a failing asset. And suddenly, I understand. She's not just raising my rent. She's erasing me. I won't leave. You will, she replies calmly, pulling out her phone. Because when the market speaks, emotion doesn't matter. She turns to leave, her reflection flashing in the hallway mirror, flawless, confident, untouchable. As the door shuts behind her, the apartment exhales. The radiator hums louder, the ceiling drips steadier, as if the building itself is mourning. I pick up the notice again. The ink has bled slightly where the water hit. I smooth it flat on the table, beside a worn leather ledger Eleanor left me filled with her neat cursive, careful notes about every tenant, every repair, every story that lived inside these walls. She used to say, a home is built on more than bricks, it's built on promises. I trace her handwriting with trembling fingers. Somewhere deep in my chest, the fear begins to burn into something sharper. Resolve. If Valerie wants a business war, I'll fight with what Grandma taught me: records, truth, and the kind of love that can't be bought or sold. My phone buzzes. A text from Mrs. Simmons, 2B, saw Valerie leave. Come for tea. We need to talk. I glance toward the window. The city outside is washed in winter light, gray and endless, but a single glow from Mrs. Simmons' apartment flickers like a signal. I grab my coat and step into the hallway. The air smells faintly of cinnamon and dust. The old stairwell groans beneath my feet, each creak whispering stories Eleanor once told. By the time I reach 2B, the scent of chamomile greets me. Mrs. Simmons opens the door before I knock, her silver hair haloed by the warm light inside. I made your favorite, she says softly. Her eyes, sharp as ever, flick to the paper in my hand. She's started, hasn't she? I nod. She raised the rent to $7,000. Mrs. Simmons sets her jaw. Then it's begun. But don't worry, dear. Eleanor prepared for this day. My heart stumbles. Prepared? She gestures toward the table, where 2 teacups steam beside a faded envelope sealed in wax. My grandmother's initials, EW, glint faintly in the light. Sit, Mrs. Simmons says, her voice steady. It's time you learned what your grandmother left behind. I sink into the chair, the world narrowing to the scent of tea, the whisper of old paper, and the first tremor of a truth I'm not yet ready to face, but must. Because this isn't just about rent. It's about legacy. And I'm done being silent. The wax cracks like brittle bone beneath my fingers. Inside the envelope lies a single key, heavy, ornate, the kind that belongs to a safe, not a door, and a folded letter written in Eleanor's careful cursive. My name graces the top like a blessing. Miranda, when the world begins to measure you by numbers instead of heart, this key will remind you of what's real. Legacy is not inherited, it's chosen. Trust what I taught you. And trust Ruth. Ruth. Mrs. Simmons, her first name rarely spoken, watches me with eyes that have seen decades of storms. She doesn't ask if I understand. She knows I don't. Not yet. Where does it go? I whisper. The storage unit in the basement, she replies, steady as stone. Eleanor told me to give you this when Valerie made her move. Her words settle like prophecy. We sit in silence for a moment, the steam from our tea swirling between us like ghosts. Through the window, snow begins to fall, thin, uncertain flakes drifting down to cover a city already drowning in indifference. Why no? I ask finally. Why would she wait until Valerie tried to? Because she knew you'd need more than anger, Mrs. Simmons says. You'd need proof. The word hits like a match. Proof. That's what Valerie has always counted on, no one daring to challenge her polished arguments, her flawless logic. I clutch the key, cold and solid in my palm. Then we find it. The basement smells of rust and old rain. My flashlight cuts through the dark, dust motes swirling like memories. Rows of metal storage lockers line the walls, each one marked with faded labels. 2A tools, Foresee Christmas, management records. At the far end, a lock gleams dully, heavy brass, engraved with the same initials as the letter, EW. The key fits perfectly. Inside, a small metal box waits beneath yellowed ledgers and sealed envelopes. I kneel, heart pounding, and lift the lid. Stacks of documents, neatly bound. Deeds. Receipts. Letters. And one folder labeled in Grandma's handwriting, Riverside, Contingency Plan. The top page bears my name. In the event of mismanagement or exploitation by any party, Miranda Wells holds full managerial authority under Stonebridge Holdings LLC. I stare, breath caught in my throat. My grandmother, always one step ahead. Mrs. Simmons rests a hand on my shoulder. She trusted you to finish what she started. Somewhere above us, a door slams, echoing through the pipes like a warning. The world upstairs continues, unaware that everything is about to shift. I clutch the folder to my chest, a lifeline in paper form. Valerie thinks she owns this place, I murmur. Mrs. Simmons meets my eyes. Then it's time you show her who truly does. The fear hasn't vanished, but it's no longer alone. It has purpose now, and purpose is a weapon. Tomorrow, I'll find a lawyer. Tonight, I'll start reading. Because the war Valerie began in greed, I'll finish in truth. The papers spread across my kitchen table like a battlefield. Deeds, contracts, handwritten notes, each line another whisper from Eleanor's foresight. I've spent the entire night reading, the clock creeping past 3 a.m., but sleep feels impossible now. Every page tells the same story. Grandma knew. She knew Valerie's hunger for power, the way she wrapped greed in silk and called it strategy. And she left me the armor to fight it. But knowing the truth and facing it aren't the same. My phone lights up with a message from Mom. Valerie says you're confused. Don't make a scene, sweetheart. She's just protecting the family. The words twist like a knife. Protecting the family? By gutting its heart? The screen blurs. I blink away the sting. Somewhere deep inside, the little girl who used to shrink beside her sister's spotlight still trembles, the one who learned that silence kept the peace. But silence won't save anyone now. I gather the folder labeled Stonebridge Holdings and the letter with Eleanor's final signature. My hands still shake as I slip them into a satchel. Tomorrow, I'll need someone who can make sense of the legal maze. I whisper into the quiet, I'm going to fight, Grandma. I just hope I'm enough. Morning light pours across the worn floorboards, harsh and revealing. I'm halfway through my second cup of coffee when the doorbell rings. Valerie. She doesn't wait to be invited in, of course not. She steps across the threshold like she owns the air itself, eyes flicking over the table strewn with papers. So it's true, she says coolly. You've been digging. I say nothing. She circles the table, her tone sharp enough to cut glass. You think you found something real? That box in the basement? Grandma was sentimental, not strategic. She didn't understand business. I straighten, pulse thrumming in my throat. No, Valerie. She understood it better than you ever will. Because she built more than wealth. She built trust. For the first time, her smile falters, just slightly. You can't stop this, she says, voice lowering. I have the family's backing. The lawyers. The capital. Maybe, I whisper, but I have the truth. Her eyes narrow. Truth doesn't pay bills. No, I reply, meeting her gaze, but it wins wars. The silence that follows is thick as storm clouds. For a heartbeat, I see something crack behind her eyes, not guilt, but fear. Then she masks it with a tight smile. You'll regret this, she says, turning sharply toward the door. You're stepping into a world you don't understand. As the door clicks shut, the air seems to vibrate with her threat. For the first time in my life, I don't feel small beneath her shadow. I feel awake. This isn't just a fight for an apartment anymore. It's a reckoning for every time I was told to stay quiet, to stay soft. Eleanor didn't raise me to surrender. She raised me to rise. By the time the sun sets, my apartment has turned into a war room. Stacks of files line the table. Eleanor's notes, tenant letters, old bank statements, every sheet a fragment of truth. But truth, I'm learning, is only as powerful as the voice willing to speak it. And mine is shaking. I haven't eaten since morning. Haven't stopped pacing since Valerie's visit. Her words echo like a curse. You'll regret this. What if she's right? The thought slithers in, cold and persuasive. She has lawyers, influence, our parents. All I have are papers and promises. The phone buzzes. Mom again. Your sister says you're planning something reckless. Don't embarrass us. Please, Miranda. She's trying to help. Help. The word burns. I glance at the faded photograph on my wall, Eleanor, smiling in front of the building's entrance, hand resting proudly on my shoulder. Her eyes gleam with quiet fire. When the world tells you to yield, stand where truth roots you. I exhale shakily. Maybe courage isn't loud. Maybe it's the whisper that keeps you standing when everything else trembles. The knock at the door breaks my spiral. It's Mrs. Simmons, clutching a folder to her chest. Her coat is dusted with snow, her expression a mix of determination and sorrow. I went through my old records, she says, stepping inside. Rent receipts, repair requests, all signed by her grandmother. She documented everything. She spreads the papers across the table. Each one is proof of promises made, of care given. She trusted you with her legacy, Mrs. Simmons whispers. You think Valerie understands legacy? She only knows leverage. I blink hard, emotion clawing at my throat. She's turning my family against me. Mom thinks I'm destroying what Grandma built. Mrs. Simmons grips my hand, steady and warm. No, you're saving it. Families can be wrong, Miranda. Even parents. But truth doesn't bend for comfort. The doorbell rings again, sharp, insistent. Valerie doesn't wait for an answer. She strides in, flanked by two men in tailored suits. She sets a crisp envelope on the table. You've left me no choice. Formal notice of termination. You're being removed from management, effective immediately. I stare at the document, the final blade. Mrs. Simmons steps forward. You have no right. Valerie cuts her off with a polished smile. The board has spoken. The room tilts. For a heartbeat, I can't breathe. Everything I've built, every tenant, every repair, every quiet act of love, threatened by one signature. But then my eyes catch the corner of Eleanor's letter beneath the pile. The words in her looping script, "Legacy is chosen." I straighten. My voice, when it comes, is soft but unyielding. I'm not signing anything. And I'm not leaving. Valerie's smile falters. You don't have a choice. Yes, I whisper, stepping closer, I do. And tomorrow, a judge will hear it. Her mask cracks, a flicker of shock, then fury. The courthouse hums with tension, the low murmur of voices, the shuffle of papers, the weight of judgment hanging in the air like a storm about to break. I sit at the long oak table, my fingers wrapped around Eleanor's letter, its edges worn soft from sleepless nights. Across from me, Valerie sits poised in her charcoal suit, every strand of hair in place, confidence painted on her face like armor. My parents are behind her, distant, uncertain, eyes full of the quiet fear that comes from realizing they may have chosen the wrong side. The judge enters. Silence falls. This hearing concerns ownership and management rights of Riverside Apartments, the clerk announces. Valerie's attorney rises first, smooth and practiced. Your Honor, he begins, the transfer of property to Stonebridge Holdings occurred under questionable circumstances. Mrs. Eleanor Wells was 82, under medication that could impair judgment. We assert undue influence. Our client seeks to restore rightful control to the Wells family trust. Each word feels like a dagger to my grandmother's memory. I swallow hard, staring down at the table until Mrs. Simmons, sitting in the front row, catches my gaze. Her eyes are steady. Stand where truth roots you. Carver, my attorney, stands next. His voice is calm, resolute. Your Honor, Mrs. Wells was lucid and deliberate. We have her medical evaluations confirming full cognitive capacity. And more than that, he nods to the bailiff, who wheels in a monitor. We have her own words. The screen flickers to life. Eleanor appears smaller, older, but fierce-eyed, sitting in her living room, hands folded neatly in her lap. If you're seeing this, it means my choices are being questioned, she says softly. Let me be clear, Riverside belongs to Miranda. She understands what I built. Valerie sees numbers. Miranda sees people. One sustains wealth. The other sustains legacy. The courtroom is silent. Even Valerie's attorney lowers his gaze. Carver continues, placing a folder before the judge. Financial records show $83,000 diverted from maintenance accounts under Mrs. Harrison's management. Tenant statements document neglect and intimidation. The judge flips through the papers, her brow tightening. Mrs. Harrison, do you dispute these claims? Valerie hesitates, just long enough for truth to show in the cracks. Her voice is sharp but thin. Business requires hard choices. Sentiment doesn't pay for roofs. And greed, the judge replies evenly, doesn't justify theft. A murmur ripples through the room. My breath catches, not in triumph, but in release. When the gavel strikes, the sound is final. This court upholds Miranda Wells as sole owner and manager of Riverside Apartments. Mrs. Harrison is ordered to return misappropriated funds within 60 days. Any interference will result in sanctions. The room blurs. My throat tightens. Valerie's eyes meet mine, defiance fading into something raw, almost human. For a moment, I glimpse the sister I once loved, trapped behind ambition she can't undo. Then she looks away. Mrs. Simmons squeezes my hand, whispering she would be proud. I exhale, a lifetime of silence leaving my lungs. Eleanor's voice echoes in memory. Connection will outlast power. And here, beneath the cold light of justice, it finally has. 6 months after the gavel fell, the building hums with a new kind of life. Morning sunlight pours through energy-efficient windows that no longer rattle in the wind. The walls, freshly painted a warm sandstone, seem to breathe again. In the lobby, laughter rises, Mrs. Johnson sharing cookies with the new family from 3D, Mr. Garcia fixing the radio by the mailboxes, and Mrs. Simmons arranging flowers for the afternoon tenant gathering. Riverside isn't just surviving. It's healing. And so am I. I stand in the renovated community room, a brass plaque gleaming above the entrance, the Eleanor Wells Community Room, where neighbors become family. I trace the letters with my fingertips, my throat tightening. Every brushstroke feels like a thank you. Miranda. Mrs. Simmons appears beside me, a small vase in her hands. Her silver hair glows under the morning light. They're asking where you want the table for the tenant board meeting. By the windows, I say, smiling. Let the light in. She studies me for a moment, then nods, satisfied. You've become exactly who she knew you would. Her words sink deep, not praise, but affirmation. The kind you don't need to earn, only to live into. Across the room, I catch sight of my parents standing quietly by the door. They've come often lately, bringing old photo albums, sharing stories I never heard. We're not healed, not fully, but we're learning. Sometimes reconciliation isn't a grand moment. It's the slow, steady rebuilding of trust, one small kindness at a time. Mom waves softly. I nod back, a peace offering wrapped in silence. Later, I step out onto the rooftop garden, where the city unfolds in amber light. From up here, the skyline looks less like competition and more like possibility. Valerie's name surfaces like a faint bruise, still there, still tender. After the court ruling, she disappeared from the building's orbit, her pride cracked but not shattered. Last I heard, she'd taken a smaller position at a firm across town. For weeks, I wondered if I should call her, to gloat, to forgive, to close the wound. But Eleanor's words whisper back, connection will outlast power. Connection isn't always reconciliation. Sometimes it's the quiet decision not to let bitterness define you. So I let her go. Below, the courtyard blooms with color, tulips planted by tenants, a mural painted by the neighborhood kids. I breathe in deeply, the air sharp and sweet with spring. This place once felt like a battlefield. Now it feels like belonging. By afternoon, the community room buzzes with voices. Tenants gather for our monthly meeting, chairs scraping across the polished floor. We talk about budgets and repairs, but also about dreams, an after-school program for the kids, a rooftop compost garden, a scholarship fund in Eleanor's name. Do you think we can afford it? Mr. Peterson asks. I glance around the room, at faces weathered by time but bright with hope. We'll find a way. We always do. When the meeting ends, people linger, sharing stories, laughter, plans. The sound fills the space like music. Mrs. Simmons pours me a cup of chamomile tea, the same blend she served the night everything began. You've done what she couldn't, you know, she says softly. You've turned a building into a promise. I sip the tea, warmth spreading through me. She taught me how. Night falls gently over Riverside. I walk the hallways, checking the lights, listening to the familiar rhythm of footsteps and laughter, the hum of radiators, the building's heartbeat steady once more. Outside my apartment door, I pause. Hanging beside it is the old eviction notice Valerie delivered months ago, now framed in glass. Not as a scar, but as a reminder of what almost was and what never will be. Inside, my desk is covered in plans, upcoming renovations, tenant assistance programs, mentorship outlines for young property managers. The future waiting to be built. I sit, open Eleanor's ledger one last time, and find a note tucked into the final page, one I hadn't noticed before. Legacy isn't about what you leave behind. It's about what continues to grow because you cared enough to plant it. The words blur as tears fill my eyes, not of grief, but gratitude. I close the ledger gently, the cover soft with age. Outside, city lights blink like constellations, mapping paths forward. For years, I thought strength meant winning. Now I know it means protecting. It means showing up. It means choosing compassion in a world that worships control. I stand at the window, watching the glow spill across the courtyard. In the reflection, I see her, Eleanor's calm eyes behind mine, her smile in the curve of my own. The woman who taught me that connection, not conquest, builds a home.